Hi, this is Jen Rubin from The Contrarian. I am delighted to have with us one of the Contrarian contributors, Andrew Weissmann. Andrew, of course, has had a distinguished career as a lawyer and was the general counsel for the FBI. He was also the lead prosecutor on the Mueller investigation. Andrew, thanks for making time for us today.
It is my pleasure, and congratulations on your endeavor, which is sorely needed.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, it seems to be needed more every day. Um, you obviously were the lawyer for the FBI. What do you make of the firing of this batch of very senior career people? And I want to emphasize career. The FBI, unlike other organizations, does not have a bunch of political appointees at the top. Talk to us a
Yeah,
little bit about that.
sure. So, just to level set, I was in Washington long enough to use those, like all those Washington speak words. So I was the
Yes.
general counsel for the final 2 years of Robert Mueller's tenure there. Robert Mueller, like every other director of the FBI, is the one and only presidential political appointment in the entire agency. That differentiates it from almost any other agency in Washington. And there's a reason for that. The same reason that there is a 10-year term by Congress for the FBI director. And that is because it is to represent that this is an apolitical institution where career people are there. And I have to tell you, when I got there, um, it it was palpable how apolitical the organization is. And for those people who have heard the it being tarred as a hotbed of the deep state, one when I was there and before it, and I think for some time after it, it was highly apolitical. And just the fact, it's really is just the facts and the law. And so, and if anything, not that there were discussions of politics. I mean, I had no idea whether people were Republicans or Democrats. But having said that, I mean, law enforcement is not exactly a hotbed of liberalism. I mean, these are,
Yes.
so this is so topsy-turvy. Anyway, Jen, this is all background to um, you get fired from the FBI for gross misconduct. And these are career people. Yes, could you be so incompetent in your job that you're demoted? Absolutely, and that should happen. Could you engage in such misconduct that you should be fired? That happens rarely, but it can happen. But there, by the way, is tons of process. I was the general counsel. There's a whole protocol about remediation, second opportunities, all of the things you do in a large corporation, which the FBI is in many ways. You do all of
Yes.
those things before you just, if anyone's listening, if you think about how do you fire somebody, it's after a lot of opportunities and you try and get them to improve, you give them metrics, all of that. The idea of just firing FBI agents or firing the career prosecutors who worked on the Trump investigations violates the civil service rules. So here's a data point. Andy McCabe,
Right.
that's just a single person. This is now happening, and it's sort of a wonderful apples to oranges in terms of Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0. It's
Yes.
the same vindictiveness, it's the same malevolence, it's the same disregard of law, but it's happening on a grand scale. And by the way, happening when I think about the career people at the Department of Justice, that is one of the first steps that the acting attorney general took. The head of our law enforcement it took was violating the civil service rules.
Right. Let me stress something. The former head of the FBI, who was compelled to resign, was none other than Christopher Wray, who was appointed by none other than Donald Trump. If he had chosen to put people in those positions, these were not people who were some kind of rabid left wingers out to sink, Donald Trump and the administration. These were the people who worked directly for Christopher Wray, who Donald Trump appointed. So, just to underscore how bizarre and unmeritorious this is there any precedent for anything like this in FBI history that you can think of?
There is no precedent whatsoever. Every director of the FBI, every single one has been a Republican.
Yes.
Um, Christopher Wray, just like Attorney General Sessions, their sin was feeling some modicum of independence, that their loyalty was not to a person, but to the rule of law.
Right.
And so that I think is what we're seeing here. And again, you can relate it to what happened to Attorney General Sessions, which regardless of whether you like or dislike his policies, and by the way, I'm enough of a institutionalist that I believe elections have consequences and policies change, and I may disagree with them violently, or some I may agree with, but that's not the issue. I mean, it's hard to make sure people understand because it doesn't sound important to talk about the reasons for civil service rules. But it used to be that in the days of Tammany Hall, where
Yes.
somebody comes in and suddenly everyone leaves and all of these political cronies come in and decisions are made not based on facts and law, that is throwing away what makes this country great and what used to be, I think, what other countries look to in America, which is that who you know and who you pay doesn't matter. That, I mean, or shouldn't matter. I mean, obviously we don't have a perfect system, but that there is this ideal, and this is saying that's gone. That is
Yeah.
completely gone.
And I want to emphasize that the FBI has always been the gold standard in law enforcement. They have a exquisitely difficult selection process and training process, and they maintain the highest standards. And that's so the American people have the greatest confidence, and they are able to perform a very, very important function, which is keeping us safe not only from domestic crime, but from foreign forces operating on US soil, from terrorism threats, whether from domestic or foreign forces. So, this is potentially taking an organization that is exquisitely designed to protect us and turning it into just a bastion of cronyism.
Let me tell you why. Let me give you an example of why you want the best there and why you want sober, mature, experienced people. When I got to the FBI, I saw like a number of people, the Presidential Daily Brief, and the threat
Yes.
streams were in there. And your jaw drops at day in, day out at the things that are in there. But there was so much. And of course, the FBI and other parts of the intelligence community tracked down everything. But I remember asking a senior official, the kinds of people who are being fired and moved out, like, how do you know what to watch? How did Director Mueller know to say on page 2, I want to know about this, and on page 7, and why are you focusing on certain things? And he said, that's the magic. That is the trick of being able to look at the noise and figure out which of these things is the most serious. Because I remember Director Mueller saying it's not any longer the case that there won't be some indication of a threat. The issue is, does it pop up? Is it something that you see as something important? And I can't stress enough, this is an apolitical issue that you want the best people there for our safety. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, what's going to happen is Katrina. You
Yes.
put people you put not the best people and not the most experienced people in these positions, bad
Bad things
things can
will pop
happen.
up.
And
Yes.
and more than that, your job in the public service is to reduce that risk. You can't prevent that risk. You can't ever reduce it to zero, but you damn well try to get it down to the lowest thing possible.
And that brings us back to Kash Patel, who is the nominee for to head the FBI. And once again, we are breaking with tradition because Chris Wray had not completed his 10-year term. We seem to sometimes forget that that in and of itself is a violation of a norm, of a insulation against cronyism. But Kash Patel, who has spread disinformation, has celebrated the January 6th insurrectionists, who published a book with a list of people that now has become known as the enemies list, who really has never had a large organization to manage, is the president's pick for to lead the FBI. What would confirmation of someone like Kash Patel mean? And what concerns you the most, if there is one particular thing that concerns you about his nomination?
Let me give you an example, and there's so many, and we don't have time for it, but let me give you one example of the unreality of the hearing yesterday, where Senator Grassley said, you'll be able to restore the terrible reputation of the FBI and the poor morale and the way that the public views it. And, Kash tells you, yes, I will. I mean, that's sort of the tenor. That reputation of the FBI has suffered in large part, in my view, because Kash Patel for the last 4 years has denigrated the FBI and
Yes.
to your point about disinformation, has said that the FBI fomented and was behind the January 6th insurrection, which, by the way, he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth. One, they're political prisoners, and what happened on January 6th is good. And the other is, no, it's bad, but the FBI did it. So it's sort of two things, but they're neither political prisoners. The case is brought by the FBI, and this is the person who's going to run it, who is saying these defendants, who the judges, Republican and Democratic judges appointed by Republicans and Democrats, including Donald Trump, have all sentenced these people, have all said these are righteous cases. To have the leader of the FBI be somebody who traffics in disinformation is the antithesis of the FBI. You know how there's sort of old dragnet school, which is like just the facts, ma'am? I mean,
Yep.
this is the opposite of that. This is just the misfacts.
Yes.
There's nothing about this that gives you any comfort. And again, going back to the history, I was fortunate enough to work for Robert Mueller, who is one of the great people and leaders of all time with an incredible work ethic, and judgment, and kindness and fairness. There aren't enough superlatives. Where we are now just is striking to me. Just
Right.
also just in the level of competence. I mean, so
Right.
we've talked a lot about um, sort of misinformation and denigration, but just in terms of running something,
Yeah.
the Robert Mueller was a U.S. attorney for many years. He was the head of the criminal division for the entire United States. He had served as the acting deputy attorney general. I mean, sort of this incredible leader. And you just don't have that level of experience. And guess what this job is? It's not a time to learn on the job.
Right. Right. Um, this is absolutely frightening. I want to end on something that some people may consider a small point, but goes to the mentality of the Trump regime in ripping out the basic fundamental values that hold these institutions together. You spotted something in the news regarding the training center that the FBI has down in Quantico, Virginia. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. This is something that's uh, just hit the airwaves, which is, of course, now the internet. And this is a photograph taken at Quantico, which is the FBI training center. Every new agent goes through there. It's a real focus. And there's a display at the very front with all of the words and adjectives to describe the FBI. So valor, integrity. Um, uh, I'm going to just hold on. I'm just going to pull it up so I get this completely right. Um, Fairness, leadership, cooperativeness, compassion, diversity, stability, institution. Um, all of those things, Jen, all of those things seem like you'd think those are good. Who's going to dispute those?
Right.
And that is now the picture is of someone painting that over so that it just becomes a white wall and all of that's gone. Presumably, it's because of the word diversity. And I just want to take a moment to talk about why diversity is good law enforcement.
Yes.
Um, pe- it- there is a diverse population of people to protect. There's a
Yes.
diverse population of people who you want to be able to trust you to give you information that can help stop crime. If you do not have people who look like America, it is that much harder to do
Right.
that. Just one simple example. Leave aside whether you think it's sort of diversity is a good thing in and of itself. There is a law enforcement reason for that. If you are seeing things that are happening to whatever community you're in, it is useful to have somebody in that community in law enforcement who you can feel an affinity to and feel like you can reach out and they understand what you're going through. That is critical to the mission of the FBI.
And we have to understand this is rolling back decades of progress. The FBI used to be known as a white male bastion. And under Hoover, it certainly was. And
Yes.
they recognized this was not a good way to pursue law enforcement, that they needed to make Americans trust the FBI. They needed people who understood America. And so they developed a diverse law enforcement agency, which is and was the gold standard in law enforcement. So, this notion that somehow quality has suffered because of diversity is utter bunk. And people should
Yeah.
really understand that.
Can I give you two quick vignettes to give you
Absolutely.
a
Please.
sense of the Bureau? One was undertaken by Director Louis Freeh. Another was undertaken by Director Mueller, which was every new agent, in order to graduate from Quantico, you had to go to the Holocaust Museum to understand what happens in a regime where there is abuse of power. They wanted you to understand the enormous weight of what power you are being given from the public and how much you had to adhere to the rules of the road and the law and the facts and what can happen if you don't. The second, which uh, Director Mueller instituted uh, right after 9/11 or shortly thereafter, was that you needed to go to a mosque. He wanted to make sure that that post 9/11 and there was not going to be a sense of vilification of one religion or another, and understanding sort of the necessary diversity of our country. And I'll end with something that the judge I clerked for used to say when he swore in citizens, and he said, "Don't." I know you've heard about a melting pot, and he used to say, don't forget where you came from. Don't give up the traditions where you came from, because the glory of our country is its diversity.
Absolutely. And it is a sad day when you have the newly sworn in Secretary of Defense say that diversity is not a strength. That is someone who knows nothing about America and is not fit to lead our armed forces, which are a reflection of the diversity of America. So thank you, Andrew, for coming on and explaining this. There's no one better to help clarify what's going on. And we hope that those agents and we hope people at the Justice Department and throughout government who are being summarily dismissed find appropriate counsel and take appropriate action to defend their rights, because it's not only them, it's the rule of law that's at issue. So thank you, Andrew, for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care, Jen. I'll talk to you soon too.